So, the 2023 season is finally over for Mercedes, but that doesn't mean its drivers are going to act like they haven't been through one of the most painful seasons in their careers, especially Lewis Hamilton, who reflected on the beginning of it and how the team has let him down when he needed them the most. The W14 was not much of an improvement when it comes to Mercedes standards, and Hamilton has pointed the finger towards the engineers for not listening when they should have, which will definitely cause some drama as the team enters the 2024 season. But are the engineers the sole blame bearers of the W14, or does Hamilton actually play a huge part in this as well? It goes without saying that the 2023 season was one to be forgotten quickly by Mercedes, especially if you're to judge by their statements. Hamilton was very happy that the last race with this particular car has finally been over in Abu Dhabi, as he took a picture of it, and Mercedes posted the scenario where Hamilton had said, "Last one with this one," on their social media. Nonetheless, the mountain they have to climb in order to catch up with Red Bull is enormous, and that has been acknowledged by Wolff. So all of this leads to one thing: who would take the blame for what happened in Mercedes in the past 2 years? This is barely a situation that you can pinpoint a single issue upon, or a single group of engineers or hard workers back in Brackley. But according to Hamilton, the fact that the engineers didn't listen to his feedback led to something that could cause a lot of vulnerability as Mercedes leans towards improving their form in 2024. They will have such increased competition from teams like McLaren and Aston Martin, as well as Ferrari, which is constantly trying to figure out stuff with their personnel and cars. So the margin for error will be equal to zero. But we'll get to Hamilton's comments on the engineers' bad work later in the video. First, we want to talk about how he self-criticized himself as to whether or not the issue was back to his driving skills, something he did not have to question in his career up until this point. As Norris once said, Hamilton is not used to driving an uncompetitive car, as he hasn't done so in the past decade. And when talking about this matter in further detail, the 7-time world champion went on to say, "Ultimately, when you have difficult seasons like this, there are always going to be moments when you're like, is it me? Or is it the car? Do you still have it? Has it gone?" Because you're missing that, when the magic happens, when everything comes together. The car and you and that spark, it's extraordinary. And that's what you're in the search for. I'm only human. If anyone in the world tells you they don't have those things, they're in denial. We're all human beings. But if Hamilton could have been blamed for the bad season last year, it would have been solely on the fact that Russell was able to extract much more performance out of the car, and at a certain point be presented as the next big thing in Mercedes, dethroning Hamilton from the #1 position in the team. However, in 2023, we saw that Russell had failed to compete on an equal basis with Hamilton, and the fact that he only won 2 podium positions goes to show that the car was indeed bad, which leaves Mercedes a lot to think about in the next couple of months. Russell has also not shied away from dropping a bombshell on the car and how it affected one of the worst seasons in his career, adding, "It's been probably one of the worst seasons of my career in terms of results. It's been just a really scrappy, messy season, and I don't think it's been through a lack of speed. We've had really strong pace in many, many races, just never achieved that result on a Sunday. I really don't know, to be honest. There's a reason every single race, whether it's me crashing into a wall or the rain coming down in Zandvoort on the wrong lap or the engine breaking down in Melbourne. Ultimately, the car isn't quite enough. We need to keep on pushing, and when the competition's so high, one small mistake and you drop a number of places." Both of the drivers finding that the car is more or less the main factor to blame for the miserable seasons they had is definitely not something we should be overlooking, and Hamilton had a lot to say about this matter as well. He's been one of the fiercest critics when it comes to the revolutionary zero-pod concept of the W13 and the W14, so you could imagine his anger when the team decided to stick with it for the 2023 season and not change anything up until they were humiliated by by Aston Martin in the first race of the season. This is when sparks started to fly between Hamilton and Mercedes engineers, as the 7-time world champion has gone to the extent of asking the team's chief engineers to take full responsibility as to why they weren't able to build a car for 2 straight years that can compete for wins. Hamilton also claimed that he has given all of the feedback they could possibly use, but it was simply not listened to, which is why the car he was given lacked a lot of pace and performance. Elaborating on this, the 7-time world champion said, "I remember the W14 feeling exactly the same as the W13, and that definitely was not a great feeling. I really had high hopes. In February, when we do a download of where the car is going, I was a little more apprehensive because the previous year it was like, the car is amazing, it's unique, no one's going to have anything like it. And then we get to the first test. I'm sure there were frustrations because I had asked for certain changes and they weren't done. No one knew exactly what the problem was. No one knew how to fix it. Having the experience of the previous year, I just applied myself in terms of digging down, sitting with the guys. We were having much better meetings." There was a lot of criticism from professional F1 experts regarding whether or not Hamilton and Russell actually knew what they wanted from the car, which is what led to the W14 being the way it turned out to be. Nonetheless, the passion has been smoothened out, and now Hamilton believes that the North Star, something they were missing heavily last year, is present for the 2024 season, and he doesn't plan on backing down by any means. The key component that the car will be worked on for 2024 is the aerodynamic department, and it seems like Hamilton understands this better than anybody else. Obviously, with no big changes coming in the regulations until 2026, there is only so much a driver can do with small tweaks here and there, but starting from scratch and making a brand new car is going to be a challenge that Mercedes is ready to embark on. Toto Wolff has opened up on this, and when talking about it in more detail, he went on to say, "We are changing the concept. We are completely moving away from how we laid out the chassis, the weight distribution, the airflow. I mean, literally, there's almost every component that's being changed, because only by doing that, I think we have a chance. We could get it wrong also. So between not gaining what we expect, catching up and making a big step and competing in the front, everything is possible." Obviously, Hamilton's comments about Mercedes having to take lessons from their customer companies like McLaren and Aston Martin, which made such huge strides during the summer and winter periods respectively, are something that Mercedes has to think about in a deeper way for the W15. The interesting thing is that the W13, the culprit of everything that turned out to be wrong for Mercedes in the following 2 years, had a lot of aero, but then again, the team knocked out too much of it for the 2023 season, and they turned out with 2 completely polar opposites of cars that ultimately made 2 very bad seasons happen for them. Elaborating on this, Hamilton went on to say, "We had a lot of aero on that first car last year. We had to basically knock a ton of downforce off it and then slowly try to add. But every time we tried to add, it was worse. So we just didn't improve for a long time. I think we understand the car so much better. They have developed great tools in the background. So naturally, I'm hopeful, but I'm not going to hold my breath." With Hamilton pledging to visit Brackley much more often than what he did up until this point to assure that the engineers are implementing his feedback, do you think this will be enough for Mercedes to win races and championships in 2024? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.